yeah, just let me know. And yes, so the charity this year is Extra Life. You can find out more info on the button. Just to let everyone know, I have gone ahead and given the contributions that I received from Tabletop Weekend and sent it to the EtherCon 2024 goal. So that's what that $100 is. That's from a previous fundraiser, and then I sent that towards the goal so that way we could reach the 10K. So yes, absolutely. If you have any donations you want to help hit the goals, check all those programs out there. We do have the links. There should be, if I set it up right, should be a little thing going on. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think it is. It is rushing to get all the stuff in and all that, and making sure it's all nice and neat. Yeah, it might be a little scuffed. So we do pray for your patience. But as always, it is an absolute pleasure. Thank you, every single one of you, for stopping by. I hope you are already enjoying EtherCon to its full potential. Of course, you've already had a chance to check out the Chocobo races, got a chance to meet Husky by the Geek, which, by the way, kind of just showing off there. He's done music for me before. Husky by the Geek is awesome. We love the guy. And we have already had such a fantastic turnabout of guests, as well as far as I know, insane amounts in donations. So yeah, we're just doing it's just a good vibe, and I want to keep that vibe going. Before we get started, let's go ahead and just open up with the most important thing. If you have not done Dawntrail MSQ, this may cover some spoilers, so I do ask that if you have not caught up with the MSQ, try to avoid. I'm really good at not just going right into the nitty gritty in terms of MSQ things. We will talk about culture. We're going to talk about languages specifically, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of references to the backgrounds of these cultures. So we shouldn't really get into things that pertain to the MSQ unless it's culture related. But again, I will do my absolute best to avoid just, spewing out, what happens at the end of the MSQ. I still want everyone to enjoy it. So, and we're going to stick on topic because I'm already going to get into it. We are not going to be able to finish the subject matter of today's lesson because the draw is huge. This is a big continent. I obviously, we already saw it, right? We got to see as much as we did. And it was already so big already. And that still does not cover the scope of this new region that we've been introduced to. So I want to make sure everyone knows. We're probably not going to be able to get to everything. And I do want to kind of stop around 15 minutes before I got to jump off. So that way I can take your questions if you have any. And then, of course, any suggestions. I got kind of like, I'm dual windowing here. I got Say Chat on here, and I got Twitch Chat on here. That's about as much as I can do. There's a lot of words going around. So we'll see what we can do with questions. But I do want to take the time to take some and, kind of just get your background on all this really cool stuff that we learned. Especially 10 years. We've been waiting 10 years to visit the Western continent, and then we're finally here and we have all this information. I'm so stoked to go over it with you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into that. I'm gonna jump over to my presentation screen. All right, so you're probably asking, sheesh, who is it? Who am I? This person just kind of shows up out of nowhere. I tend to do that. Historically, that has been the case. I've just kind of popped up in big events. It started off with FanFest, of course. But I'm going to go ahead and go from the beginning because we're hitting 9 years. I'm hitting 9 years in Final Fantasy XIV. Blows my mind. Never thought I'd be getting to this point, and there's a whole story I can get into how long it's been and all the stuff I've done. And oh man, it's crazy. Crazy experience that we've had so far, but an absolute joy. But it started in 2015. Right, I was a Duskwhite Ezreal with red hair, as you can see up there. And then, of course, I had a chance to go visit FanFest. I got to meet Sly the Fox, as you can see in that photo, in 2016, right? And then I joined up with AFM, or also known as Etherflow Media, where I wrote articles for the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. And I went over all sorts of stuff. We talked about the Alagon Empire. We talked about Eureka, which was a community-voted article. And I also got to join EtherStream, which was a podcast. And we talked about Final Fantasy topics, lore, all sorts of stuff, MSQ, what have you. I got to go on this show for about 34 episodes. And then, of course, FanFest in between, right? Got to go to FanFest 2018. Got to meet Foxclaw in person. And if you don't already know, I am, in fact, the Spikes on Spikes guy. I was the one who raised my hand when they were trying to get some lore for the vegetarian, and I was the one that said to put spikes on the fish that you can catch in Hell's Lake. That was me. To this day. And with that, of course, the pandemic hit. We lost an opportunity to meet in person, but of course, beautiful things like this program, such as EtherCon and LunarCon presentations, right? We were able to meet up digitally. We got to go to the Fan Fest digitally, and then I started my platform, the Eslam Collate, which is entirely based on lore and narrative, and I really got into it. I just grilled really hard into what I loved about Final Fantasy XIV to start off with, which was the world building, storytelling, everything about that, plot. And I started sharing my takes on it, and I started documenting it and posting it online, and I got on Twitch and made videos, all that kind of stuff, right? It was just a good time. Before I knew it, here we are, right? Making videos, talking about the lore of Final Fantasy XIV and semi-professional presentations. I could do a little bit more work here and there with the aesthetics, but this has been some of the best things I've ever been able to do in my life with this platform and with this franchise. And of course, another podcast right there, you can see as a Final Fantasy or XIV Light Party. Did a couple episodes there. Got to interview Anonymous. I've got to interview so many people. And then 2023, which is that photo you see there, I'm with Foxclon and Yoshi P asking them about Ilsabard. Where the heck is Ilsabard? We've been waiting 10 years for that cloud to move. And I really, really, really want... I want Ilsabard to be free. I want the Ilsabardians to be proud of their nation as much as I am proud of Thrall and all these other nations that we get to visit. Man, if we go to another planet before we get to see Ilsabard, I'm going to be so livid. I'm just saying. Hashtag uncloud Ilsabard. We've been keeping this going since 2021. And Yoshi P told me someday. So, I'm still waiting. Hashtag uncloud Ilsabard. Everyone knows. We've been doing this for years. But yeah, that is a quick rundown of who I am. I am just a big lore nerd. But special opportunity I get to talk about because I recently got permission to talk about. And so we're going to go ahead and open with this because it's important to the show. I got a special opportunity as of last month. I have been contracted by Renegade Game Studios to write the lore for HeroScape, Return of a tabletop game I used to play as a kid. So, things like this panel, is actually my real job. So you are all, in fact, helping me prepare for this fantastic franchise that I'm working on. We have so many things to look forward to in the next couple years, but I'm writing for this game. I'm writing for HeroScape, and all my experiences with Final Fantasy XIV goes right into it. And it's just this big feedback method. Everything I experience in 14, I get to use in HeroScape, and everything I play in HeroScape, I'm bringing back into 14. Yeah, no, it's super cool. I am absolutely just through the moon, and I know for a fact I would not have been able to do it without your help, the audience, without EtherCon's help, without LunarCon's help, because having this show, being able to present with this panel, allowed me to put this on a resume, and then I take the resume to the big ups, and they were like, hey, we like this. Why do you want to do this for a job? So, to pin that in the nail, I want to go ahead and let everyone know, do not ever give up on your dreams, because you never ever know where it will go. It took me 13 years to get here, and now I'm writing for a video game. Well, not a video game, but a game. I'm writing for a game, lore for a game that I've always wanted to play. So, yeah, and hashtag uncloud Ilsabard, don't forget that either. But I want everyone to remember that, and again, just huge thank you to everyone who's supported up to this point, because again, these panels are a huge part of that. Being able to talk about the lore, go over all this cool stuff, and oh man, Final Fantasy XIV, you know it, has plenty of it. So with that, I do want to go ahead, quick segue. I am offering a quick incentive for the remainder of September for Extra Life. If you donate to my, if you go onto the Extra Life team, either you go to the EtherCon team, you can actually jump down to the roster, right? You see my name in the roster. If you donate to my name, if you donate $6, right, I will get your Final Fantasy XIV concept into HeroScape in a fan fiction that I am writing for charity. It actually started with Tabletop Weekend. I already got a handful of characters that are associated with that. And now I'm offering to you, the audience, and everyone that is attending EtherCon, and for the rest of the... It says turn off the nameplates. I got you. Yeah, no, I didn't realize it was going to fill up so fast. So let's go ahead and do that. This is hide. modify that. I appreciate that. Thank you for mentioning it. It does look a little bit better too. Thank you, really. But yes, and so if you go ahead and donate $6 right now, I can go ahead and take your Final Fantasy XIV concept and put it into the HeroScape lore, and we're going to work in this really cool story that will be working towards, introducing the idea that you can in fact take video games and help children. You can help hospitals. You can help do amazing things with that. So yeah, it does look amazing now. Thank you so much for the offer, or this suggestion. I appreciate it. With that, let's go ahead. I'm pretty sure that's pretty much the hefty parts of my introduction, but I do want to go ahead and really pin that charity opportunity. It's going to be lasting until the end of September. So, of course, let's just get right into it. Doral's massive, okay? This this nation that we have had an opportunity to explore in the past, we're looking at about almost a year now? No, I'm silly. I don't know time. Don't listen to me. What is time? It's not been a year. It came out it came out in July, but we've already had a chance to explore it for a good couple months, and guess what? We haven't seen it all. This is but a small portion of this massive nation that has been a special opportunity for Final Fantasy players and fantasy lovers worldwide, and Final Fantasy lovers worldwide, right? I took a picture of the planet. When you can go up on the moon right now and take a picture of the planet. It's super cool, little rotation. I'll tell you right now, for all the video nerds out there in chat, it takes about an hour to get a full rotation of the planet. If you want to record that and then slim it down so you have a nice little background rotation of the planet. I've done it plenty of times. It's so much fun. But as you can see from the map there, I went ahead and took some clips, and I have my location positioned exactly where you can teleport into Tuliolal, right, from the Ethernet, right? So that's the Ethernet plaza. So that's the center portion of the Tuliolal capital. As you can see, that's kind of more or less smidge in the nation, right? But there is so much more to explore, right? It says, why is the planet dark sometimes? Is a criteria for it. Let's go ahead. I'm going to hold on to questions for our last 15 minutes, but I am keeping an eye on things. All right? I know, and there's still clouds on Thural. I know, clouds everywhere. We need to get rid of the clouds. And Thural is very cool to explore. We do love our tacos. I love the tacos. I want to get tacos. So, alrighty. Let's go ahead and prog. But yes, I just want to go ahead, and perspective is a huge thing here. And we also, I did mention about the MSQ. I already had warned ahead. We're not going to go into the meat, but just to let you know, we're going to be talking some stuff. I do also want to point out here, I do ask everyone in the audience to keep an open mind, because we are exploring the idea of languages, right? And languages do, in fact, revolve around emotional, around cultural implications that may not really reflect the same sort of things to you, how you were raised, right? But are incredibly significant to other people, to the other people who were raised that way. And so as we go over these conversations and we're talking about the lore of indigenous cultures and especially indigenous languages, I do ask for a little respect. And of course, it's an open conversation, so any questions are welcome, and especially those about, curiosity. If you want to know more, that's what the panel's for. Hey, that rhymed a little bit. But I don't, we got consideration, respectfulness, tone, things like that we can do. And I definitely will help out, because I am so obsessed with this subject that I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to explore it on equal ground. I don't know everything, right? I don't know everything. And I don't think everyone else knows it. We're not going to ever be able to know everything. But it's always fun and important to have an open dialogue. So that's what this panel is about. And so I want to make sure that is explored and kept open. So feel free to ask any questions at all. All right. So one of the large portions of Thural that we got to learn about, and this is going to kind of get it, we're cutting into some of the more specialized locations, right? And this is going to be kind of inviting us to expand our understanding of the setting of where we're at in the Western continent. We already learned about Yaktural and Shaktural, continent of the mother and continent of the father. They're split by the crack, that seam in the earth, which if we don't go there, if we don't go into the sunken area where they actually have references to a potential story. uh, I'll take it, right? But that was definitely a red herring for a reason. But that's one big continent. We have to remember that this is one big continent split in half by a crack. So it's still kind of connected geologically at the very bottom of that chasm. But outside of that chasm, the only way you can get to each side is through that bridge, the sky bridge, right? So we only got to visit, and I do want to kind of, and I know I've reviewed the discussions, and I've seen a lot of people talk about it, right? Dawntrail did feel a little rushed. I want to say I think it's because there was just so much to present. It made it really hard to cover all the material, and this is a big part of it, right? Because when you get into Shaloni, you're going to that nation for a very specific reason, and that very specific reason has very specific filters, and they can only really tell that story through that lens. So I don't think they felt they had the chance to introduce the entirety of Shaktaral to the players in that amount of time they had, right? In previous conversations, and this is homework that I'm owed, like I got to go do this. This is my fault. But we have learned that, or at least I've learned in the Final Fantasy edition the PlayStation edition of Final Fantasy XIV, it splits off the MSQ into different segments. So when you open into your home screen, you can see where you're at in the game. And it had percentage-based completions, and I noticed that it divided Dawntrail into 4 arcs. A lot of people felt like Dawntrail was split into 2. According to PlayStation, it's split into 4. And I still have to figure out where those splits are. But without that realization, it tends to kind of mesh really difficult. And so I think Shaloni really didn't get a chance to explore that. But I found out, thanks to the role quests, that's not true. We actually learn a lot more about Shaktaral, specifically from the role quests. And so we're going to do a quick little review. As you can see, we got a little swallowtail butterfly, right? Because we learned that there is a tribe of Shatona that live in the forests area of Shaktaral. If you remember, there's a small, itty-bitty little forested area, right? The Piarionen Plain. But that is not the entire it's not the way they describe the forest reaches of Shaktaral. It's not the one that's mentioned in the quest. So already we have from this melee quest line an entire region unexplored by Final Fantasy XIV players. We're back to square one and pushing a lot of the arguments that Dawntrail is in fact the opening expansion to a whole new adventure. We got so much more to see, and that's one of those, right? So we know there are Shatona clans to the northeast direction. We only met one in the Yassulani area. One, right? We already know all the story beats of that, but we didn't. Yeah, Yassulani was just one Shatona group, right? So we're kind of experiencing, I think, something along like the Ari, right? A lot of people have said, is there only one Ron group because of Suino Sato? No, that's not true. The lore says that the Ron are in different groups. They're all over the place. They interact, right? They mesh. But you see Suino Sato and you think that's the only one there. I don't want people thinking just because you see Yassulani and the area over there, the Everkeep, right, in Heritage Found, that's the only Shatona camp we have. There are a lot more. There are, in fact, more Shatona camps. I'd imagine because we don't really have any explanations that align with the Vieira lore from 12, that there are probably more Shatona. We could expect more Shatona camps than Vieira camps. That's my theory, but who knows? We can't really visit them yet, right? And then, we also have, the world scale problem. Alex makes a very good point in chat, right? There is a world scale problem, and I'll go ahead and kind of segue real quick and mention that Koji has brought this up in an interview before. He has said that the game is scaled too small because it's meant to be accessible to players. They can't really show you how big this world really is. Just imagine your own setting. Imagine your own town. Imagine your own city. How long it is to get to the end of your city, to get to the city next over. It takes so much time, right? They can't do that in a video game. We don't have the procedural basis, unfortunately. But because of that, and I do appreciate Alex bringing it up, because of that, they do have to cut things down, and we see that a lot. We don't get to visit everything that's available in these nations. But it's important to remember that they're still there, that there are opportunities to expand on cultural representations, okay? We may have only had a few handfuls in what we saw in MSQ, but that isn't saying that is the only available ones. So that's why I think it's really important to remember these, right? And then we got the Disciples of Land role quest definitely imply and touch there being more bun settlements out there. Yep. And I was finding that out, and I thought that was cool because, I mean, I'm a bun, right? And then it says, it's good to keep in mind that this game has no definite end. It is an ever-changing, ever-growing MMO world. I love that. I love that. Again, referring to my past, I've been playing this game for 9 years. How? I don't know, because they keep making it bigger. Because they keep telling me there's more to visit, and I'm like, okay, intrigued, and then I'm stuck. You know? And so, yeah, Dawntrail's not supposed to be absolutely everything. Again, snapshots of every area. And that's really cool to think about because it's an exciting opportunity to invite you to explore more. And it's just the beginning. We're learning about Doral. We have not explored everything of Doral. We're only learning about Doral. Remember, I like to think that their advertising tends to play a very important part into what we're learning, right? And part of that advertising, of course, is the Doral, right? Go visit the new continent. And then they're like, yeah, we have tacos, and they're you get the Duralist, right? They have hoodies with the Doral logo. I feel like the reason why that's part of the marketing is because they want you to literally explore Doral. It is supposed to be an invitation. And so much more is to be there, right? So much more to be there. And they said, we do hope to see more Should Say Yeheheceyaa. Got really annoyed they're not more focused on the Native American influences. And I guarantee you, a lot of the references that they probably would appreciate most are like part of those groups that we didn't get to actually see. That's why I think it's so cool to think that this place is so much more bigger than we had access to in Dawntrail. Because then, yes, if you, a member of a indigenous group, if you are a member of a First Nation group and you felt underrepresented by Dawntrail, do not forget that Doral has not been fully explored. There is still a chance for you to be able to put that into the game. You can put your indigenous representation into the game now because the continent exists and is that large, and there's so many nations and there's so many groups and tribes and people that you can now be part of the Final Fantasy XIV world. And we got the MSQ patches, we have the variant dungeons and the field operations. We already know about the Cult Crescent, which is supposed to be in the Shades Triangle, which we already know is a reference to the Bermuda Triangle. And let's not forget, Endwalker already revealed that as the Caribbean representation. And so me, as a man of Trinidad descent, is super excited. Very excited about the Crescent. Because if they make any references to Trinidad, I mean, take it, right? I got it. And then you get the several patch explorations, you get more expansions, more references. There's our more involvement from Wuklamat. Yeah, she does have to learn about other nations too. But, as she goes and starts settling into the role as Dawn Servant. And you get the idea the train boys consult with the native populations to make sure developing the railroad wouldn't harm the native wildlife is a cool idea. Yes. I like that a lot, and I want to highlight it just real quick, grab that. And it's important to note that they took the time to do that because in railroad history, we know the alternative, and the alternative was not a good history. But in our Final Fantasy history, we've learned what happens when you do work together, and it actually was a really cool thing. And yeah, I do hope they go over into... If they don't go over it more in the game, I hope they mention it in the lore book. That would be awesome. Kind of just see a little history detail of how that went. Alrighty. Let's go on to the next slide. So yeah, again, we're just kind of laying out the map. And then we have some more Should Say Yeheheceyaa references that we got from the role quest I was really just impressed about. Right? We have the northern valleys, right? And then we have the northern reaches. So Central Valleys, Northern Valleys. It's easier. I'm gonna be pulling up a bigger map once we get through the panel, and on the side you'll see, right? Not just the crack in the center of the continent, but there is some sort of cracks leading in through the north area of Should Say Yeheheceyaa. So yeah, there's a group of people living in those areas. right? And then we have a group of people. So I'm looking at the map here, and it blows my mind because, like, if they're saying northern reaches, and I'm like, are you talking here? Right here? This is the very edge of the map, right? Everywhere I clipped, these clipped areas are the, I mean, that's the end. Like, at that point, it's just ocean. No, at least that's what we think. But yeah, no, northern reaches. So you're telling me there's a tribe of Tonawatan that traveled from here all the way to Tuliolal to seek your help in recovering that treasure. That's fascinating. It's a very fascinating concept. Fancy Alaska. Oh, man. And I lived in Alaska, by the way. Fun surprise, or fun little fact for you. I lived in Alaska for a few years, and I love it. Very, very cool place, and I highly recommend people check it out when you get a chance. If you ever do get a chance, you're like, oh, where should I go explore? Alaska. Definitely. But I thought it was fascinating that they expounded on Shaktaral so much in these role quests. So now we know more or less from the role quest where these Tonawatans are from, because we heard about them. We heard about the Shatona and we heard about the Tonawatan in MSQ, and then they were like, oh yeah, they sent representatives to Tuliolal, but where are they from? We don't know where they're from, and now we know. We get the northern reaches, we got the valleys, but then of course we have the Hetzro, right, who also show up. It is important to remember the Hetzro are nomadic, so they don't actually have a set location. Where they are is dependent on where their guiding animal is taking them. So, like, for example, the Ronique are currently in the Piorionan Plain, and that's where that group is going to be at. Each group has their own guiding spirit. They follow that to wherever it goes, and they're all over the place. They're probably in the plains. They're probably in the snow. They're probably in the valleys. But Hetzoro do not have, as far as I understand, a set location like the other groups. So we already have, I mean, we've only gone over, what, 4 particular groups and, like, more set piece locations for them that we didn't get in MSQ. Remember, none of this is in MSQ. None of this is in MSQ. This is all role quests. This stuff that's kind of like you get to explore, and then also side quests, fun stories, little things like that. We're gonna get more into it, of course, and this is just to reference it. But of course, we can't forget the other tribe that we were introduced to and we learned about, and it was one of the major tribes that we learned about specifically from Shaktaral, and that is the Waleki from the Lapis Canyon. It turns out, and I found out thanks to Twitter, it turns out that Lore of the Waleki comes from the Fisher quest. So if you want to learn about the Blue Mage origin story, you want to learn some more Blue Mage lore stuff, you got to do your Fisher quests. So shout out to Fisher, Fruity Snacks. You got another, you got another win, I guess. I don't know. Fishing is just that great. We're just put all the lore in it. I love it though. It's really fun. And it says, yeah. And then that was just one portion, by the way. This is a pretty good clip. You can kind of see the little valleys I was talking about there with that lake. They mentioned the lake. I know the Shatona that we talked to mentioned the lake. And we got a couple questions about the Lalafell. We will be talking about them soon. So I promise we will go over that too, because this is all part of it, right? This is all Dawntrail lore. In one expansion, in one expansion, they mention all of this. So we'll definitely be talking about Lalafell in a bit as well. But yes, with that, we have the southern portion of Tural. This is Yaktural. And we have where Tuliolal's at. We have Yaktel right here, the Azure Forests, right? We have Mamuk in that area. Kosamalka, right? Orokopacha, right? We know that's where the Pelu Pelu come from. We know that's where the Yakui descendants went, right? So it's important to remember that throughout history, in the different orders, right, we have the Yakui are the oldest, right, and they were an empire. They dominated all of Yaktaras. So all of the stonework and the masonry that you can witness, and a lot of stuff that we explore in dungeons, right, that's Yakui. That's Yakui stone masonry, right? The giant empire. When they tried to enter Shaktaral and they got that disease, right? And they were cast out because they weren't able to fight it. right? And they decided that was it. The empire's done, and they left. Their descendants went up into the mountains, and so that's where they are at in Urcopacho. He said, "Why is the limitation on who can go to Shaktaral? Because of the smallpox." Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned it. We're talking about that about the Yakui. You needed the passport, and and that's a thing to remember. The passport didn't become important until the development of Tuliolal and the bridges and stuff like that. So I feel like that is something they probably will mention more about, is why there was that essential limitation on so many different areas. Fantasy Chile. Yeah, so we had Fantasy Alaska and Fantasy Chile. Urcopacha is really, really good in terms of the Chilean references, the Peruvian references, for references to kind of just some of the stuff that I know, right? And especially, only the Dawntrail give it to you. So that's why I'm imagining there's some sort of rulings about Shaktaral in the past, pre-Tuliyola rulings, that we don't know anything about. And yeah, there's more to learn. Because I mean, again, there's the amount of nation lore that we got about Shaktaral from just lore quest alone is crazy. But yeah, and then of course we have the Pelu Pelu, which, by the way, I just have to put it out there. Mezcal is delicious. I got to try some for the first time because of Dawntrail, local restaurant. Had a shot. That is a really interesting spirit. And considering that one of the major industries of the Pelu Pelu is mezcal, I thought that was awesome. I was like, what a cool reference. And no, don't forget that there's this, we're kind of jumping into the language part of it already, but tying into that, right? The Pelu Pelu distillery process, apparently, from what I understand, those pots, the way they're designed, is actually South Asian in design, which then references yet another culture that not a lot of people have, like, and it's been brought up, and I've seen it on Twitter, and Twitter is really good at kind of just mentioning this, right? But there are a lot of references to other nations that people aren't. Everyone sees Chile, everyone sees Mexico, everyone sees all these stuff, but they don't realize there are other references, right? There are a lot of Southeast Asian references, right? The Filipino references, right? The islands of the cultures of those islands are tied in with a lot of stuff and Latino references too, right? And you got to get into the history. There's so much history to all of this, right? And it all ties in. And they took that and put it into Final Fantasy XIV. So, you have the Pelu Pelu who are using a distillery method for mezcal that is based on a Filipino tradition. And that's so crazy to me that they put that in the game, right? And that's just one of those things, of many things that they added. And then, we got the Mamooks, we got the Mamosha. We also learned there's because of the quest line, because of the role quest, there are Mamosha tribes even further south than Mamook, down here in this peninsula, right? We don't know. And I kind of cut it off because of pictures and stuff, but there's like islands all over here. There's little splotchy islands all over here. There's islands all over here too. But there's like all of this, the clouded area. So when they were mentioning their Mamosha representatives from other groups that aren't even in Mamook, I'm like, oh, are we ever going to see everything of Tural? Is Tural just going to be the next Ilsa Bard? Please, no. And let's see. Down servers made skip and Chile mentioned, yeah. Ukulma, hot second. Your friends made you shiburuk pibil for dinner one night. Oh, that sounds amazing. Oh, I love tacos. I had some carne asada the other day. I had some, it was tacos al pastor. Ooh. I forgot how those go. Those are so good. They're so good. So I'm going to tie this into now the language portion of our panel, right? Because I wanted to make sure everyone had a general basis of our landscape. Our language portion of the panel starts with my language portion, and that is the fact that I am, in fact, a semi-fluent Spanish speaker that lived in Honduras, which I call Yactael, but it's not specific. I mean, there's they borrow a lot, by the way. It's not just one nation represent one nation, right? Yactael is a mix. Urcopacha is a mix. All these nations, Tuliyola is a mix, right? So I call it Yactel, but it's not Yactel. There's a bunch of different things. But I lived in Honduras from 2012 to 2013. And during that time frame, as you can see, there's a photo of my younger self there. I also went to one of the highest points in Honduras. This is the El Pino. Right? This giant mountain, and then got a really cool picture from there. And so from that experience, again, yo puedo hablar español y es un parte de mi vida de muchos años. I love speaking Spanish. I love being able to speak Spanish and help translate, right? Because I have to translate all the time. And not only that, I have family members, right, in the Latino community. I have my brother-in-law who's from Chile. Shout out to him, right? And that means, so my niece and my two nephews are Chilean descendant. And so, yeah, Bagnac saying Ercopacha is essentially Andean culture references. So Chile, Peru, Bolivia. Yes. So I was like, I'm just super excited I get to show my nietos. I get to show them that. I get to show them in my favorite video game a nation based on their nation's background heritage. I'm like, that's insane. Super cool. I'm like, look, alpacas. Like that seems silly, but I promise you, getting to show an alpaca mount to my niece is going to be the coolest thing I've ever done as a video gamer in a long time. And that is because of these cultural references. And it's just, again, big part. Huge, excited. Also, my other brother-in-law is from Mexico. I'm Mexican descent. So we have all these cultural backgrounds that I'm part of. And hablo español también. And just when I got to enter Honduras for the first time, of course, the biggest part of it is bienvenidos a mi casa. Bienvenidos a mi hogar. I literally felt at home. I felt at home being able to enter a zone that felt like Honduras. Like I was able to understand the food references. I was able to understand so many things about the place. Just why they do the things they do, the cultural references, the family references, the food references. Yeah, and Sprox and thank you for sharing that. Sprox is saying in chat, Ercopacha felt like home. Ercopacha felt like home to me. And not only a home I lived in, but a home I inherited because of my family, right? Because I get to show my brother-in-law Ercopacha, and he's from Chile. I get to show my nietos Ercopacha, and they have Chilean ancestry. So it's just so beautiful that now exists in the games. You get to see mate, right? The mate drink, the mezcal, right? These little references, the mega magueyes. They made a monster that they harvest the mezcal from. That was so cool. That's such a cool Final Fantasy world building experience because, of course, yeah, in the real world we harvest the agave. It's simple, right? You cut the top off, whatever, right? But in Final Fantasy 14, that's not how you do it. You gotta fight a giant monster that has blades for hands. Matecito, yeah, it's so good too. I love mate. Only gripe is how well all the food represent the culinary recipes. Why did MSQ ever talk about tacos? I want to say it's social media. If there's an answer to give for that, I think it's social media. But tacos are easier to associate with than all the other foods. And then I think it's an invitation. It wants you to, it's beckoning you. Because remember, they gave Alice a chirimoya. She's never seen a chirimoya in her life. Right? This is the sugar apple. And then you can go buy chirimoyas in the game. So there are options. There are invitations to learn more. Why is the al pastor item description sauteed in the pan, though? That's because they don't know how to make it. I don't know. Don't quote me. Whip it. That's not. I don't have any I have no idea. But I do like al pastor. Yeah, the chirimoya representation. There's a whole trailer. Do you know how much work it takes to animate fruit? And they took the time to animate a chirimoya. So, will there be a VOD for this panel? There absolutely will be. The VOD will remain on this channel, and I know they uploaded it to YouTube. To the EtherCon YouTube, so please feel free to check it there as well. And I appreciate it. No worries at all. I know people are busy. Work is real. Life is real. I'm just happy that you got to stop by when you were able to. Thank you so much. And you're so happy to see sugar apples in the trailer for the first time. It's your favorite fruit. See? There you go. Representation. Again, big part of this. But again, the core of this panel is the languages. So we're going to try to get to that part. Because I know I'm going to be talking about that forever. No. Why did the tab die? Hold up. Restore. Okay, I'm breaking the illusion. Forgive me. What was that? Of course. All right, by the way, one important thing about stream or this is an important thing I say about content creation. It's always going to go wrong. Something always goes wrong. So there's my one mistake for today. It took so long to appear, but okay, we're cool. Alrighty. Out of all languages, bro chose to speak nonsense? Bruh. No, like seriously though, when I tell you that languages are some of the coolest things on planet Earth, I am so happy that that is a thing I'm obsessed with, and that is a thing that we can explore in Final Fantasy XIV. Just to kind of cut into it, as you know, Koji Fox is a master's in linguistics. He has a master's degree in linguistics. And one of the very first things he did when he joined in while he was working as a localizer was offer a dictionary of dragon speak. He wrote a language for the dragons while he was working on Levin and decided to offer that to Banryota. Banryota said, hey, that's a cool idea. We'll work on it later. And then it became the core concept for Heavensward. So that being the core of it, and then he ended up developing the Fey runes, and then, going on. He's also a man of puns. Oh, he loves puns. Yes, he wrote a dragon dictionary. As Alex Mander in the chat is asking, the dragon dictionary is accessible on the forums. It's super cool. Highly recommend that you check it out. But yeah, no, for real though. The most important thing to remember about languages is it is considered in philosophy the means in which we shape our reality, right? Studies in linguistic diversity suggest that the languages we speak profoundly shape the experiences of the world to us, right? And so I'm quoting a lot of my panel moving forward for the next for the next 30 minutes or so. It's going to be getting into a little bit of philosophical cut, but it's going to be talking about the idea of how languages form our perception, right? And I want to go ahead. I'm going to do some clips. We're going to quote some clips from this beautiful article. I will be posting this later on in like Discord and stuff like that. This article honestly is one of my favorite reads. It's something I like to read on the and recommend it. Feel free to check it out when you get a chance. But it's a 4-minute article that discusses the idea of how languages shape our reality. And then these are some clips. It's important to note. There are 700 human languages spoke across the globe, all with unique sounds, vocabularies, and structures. Okay. In Australian Aboriginal community Pompura, for example, the concepts left and right do not exist. Instead, locations are referred to by their relation to the sun. In Russia, the sky is not blue, at least not in the way we English speakers think it's blue. Why? Well, that's because in Russian, right, there's no single word for blue. They have separate words. There's light blue, there's dark blue, and so they can distinguish the difference based on what the sky looks like to them. They can say it's a dark blue sky or a light blue sky in Russian, right? Those who speak the Zuni language have trouble telling orange and yellow apart because there is no difference between those two in the Zuni language. So that's, snapshots. We're just kind of like jumping around. Those aren't really particular literally, but it helps explain some important stuff, right? So, and then one last thing, it doesn't just impact how we see the world, it also impacts our mindset towards it, right? Some languages don't have future tenses. So there are some things known as futureless languages where they don't really refer to the idea of a past or a present. They just kind of just talk in the now. And because of that, they've seen significant consequences to the lack of a tense in those languages. People who speak those languages tend to save less money, have attitudes more in the present than in the past, because they don't have a future tense in the language they speak. So just a snapshot that, right? Languages we speak shape everything we do, from how we process experiences to how we behave. And I just love that because language is gorgeous. And again, being able to speak Spanish, yo hablo español, I have always had the beauty of exploring two realities from 2023 or 2013. So about, 10 years, I've been able to learn from the Spanish side of things and then from the English side of things. And it's just expanded my understanding of how learning works. Does this mean in English that the languages we speak shape our realities? We were discussing about how different languages have different words for things, and that because those different words exist, they perceive the world in different ways. And because of that perception, they speak, understand, and act in different ways as a result. And so we're discussing about how important it is to remember that when we're discussing languages. And I was going into Spanish. I see into realities because yo hablo español and I speak English. And as a result, there are words I know that I cannot translate. And it's just a really neat opportunity to be able to go between the two worlds and explore a little bit more about those backgrounds. And so that's why I'm always inviting people. Because as we learn in the book, Lines in the Sand, right? The tribes hailing from frozen lands withered beneath the desert sun, while those that thrived in open plains could not pierce dense jungle. Such was the way of it, until the leader of the Mamulja succeeded in bringing the continent under one banner. Right? The entire thing about Tuliolal is diversity. The entire story about the nation that was founded by the Dawn Servant is about learning how to interact with different realities. And that's why they focus so much on these different languages, because now it's an opportunity to try to explore meaning in different ways. And as a member of Tuliolal, as a visitor of Tuliolal, you're invited to explore these multiple pictures. These aren't just, it's not like Ishgard had its background heritage, right? And there's all these nations that come to it. But for the most part, a lot of the Eorzean nations have this really specific standard picture. Tural is the biggest pluralistic nation to date because it's made up of so many different moving parts, all connected into one singular whole by choice. And the choice is because they find it better to work together than to work apart. So I got a little cut off here. I was rushing to get some stuff done at this point. So we'll go over it on my notes, unfortunately. I do apologize. But we did talk about it, right? Tural, we got Yak, which is south. Shakwath is north, and Tuliolal, right? With Cozomalca, right? I want to talk about Cozomalca real quick, and I don't have the notes on the board, but I have them right here. And it's really important to note, right? Blew my mind with that nation already. Because Cozomalca has, in one half the portion, right? We have two particular groups, right? I won't focus on the Moblins too much, because the Moblins are more Final Fantasy than in-game reference to an outworld culture, right? But the individuals, the Hanu Hanu, are so fascinating in the fact that they reference a previous cultural establishment that has already come up, but in a unique and localized regional way, right? Everyone already made the reference, right? They kind of, I kind of made this reference before. I mentioned it before. I wish MSQ was a little bit less hand-holding, and they kind of helped you kind of make connections. Like, yeah, they helped you make connections, but I wanted some people to make connections on their own. People are like, oh, they look just like Vanu Vanu. I swear they're Vanu Vanu. It's like, yes, no, we know. There's a connection. Letting people find that connection out was awesome, but they kind of push it in some parts. From what I understand, right, the Kishaihi deity is reference to some sort of bird. I want to say it's either spirit and entity that they followed from their homeland in the Sea of Clouds, right? And so this is crazy because we haven't really thought about the Vanu Vanu since Heaven's Ward. But even the Vanu Vanu back in Heaven's Ward had different groups, right? They had the Vundu, They had the different groups. They had the Zundu, right? You had the ones that summoned, and then the Gundu. You had the ones that summoned Bismarck and demanded fealty from the other tribes. And if they didn't demand fealty, they'd take them over, right? That aggression that was imposed upon them by the primal Bismarck. But even then, we learned that the Vanu Vanu legends were the legends they told were shared from an even earlier point in history. Because Bismarck isn't just the only. How many Bismarcks are in the game already, right? There's a Bismarck on the first. There's a Bismarck in Sea of Clouds. There's a Bismarck the Primal, Bismarck the God, right? And then the Bismarck that's in the Seawolf stories, that is separate from the Vanu Vanu stories. So there's some sort of connecting element of this giant whale that is so like this giant whale that has impressed so many people throughout history. And that's only one portion of that culture, because now we have an additional element. We learned that the Hanu Hanu follow the bird spirit to the west. And it pulls a lot of references. If you understand a little bit of Polynesian culture, right? Of the islands in that area, a lot of their heritage and their myths are tied to the idea of voyages and travels, right? Cannot get the name off the top of my head, but a lot of the early Polynesian legends reference travel from island to island, establishing nation by boat. The songs of the people that travel, right? And I know this is the watered down version, so don't cut me for this, but to kind of help ease it in, right? The Moana story, where she traveled, right? That stuff is very, very important to the Pacific Islands. And they were able to tie that into the Vanu Vanu in the past in a sort of way with the Sky Islands. They took the Sky Islands and they were able to make references to Pacific Islands with the Sky Islands, and made an additional reference to those Pacific Islands with Tural through Kishaihi and Ihihana and all the cool celebrations. And then, oh, hang on, I gotta do it right. Kaylee, right? All those references are to pull people's attention back to those heritages, the islands, and the Pacific Islands and things like that. And it's gorgeous. It's Ohokeli, yes. It is a beautiful impression. I'm not entirely sure how to explain it. It is something that helps me feel confident in the power of storytelling. So going back to our little philosophy article, right? They talk about how different organisms experience reality. And in ethnology, the word in German is Umwelt. It refers to how different organisms experience reality, right? And the reason why they talk about Umwelt, right, in German, is because you gotta think about this. For example, bats, nocturnal organisms, perceive reality different than, say, a monkey or a fish, right? A being's Umwelt is made up of more than sensory perception. It's also shaped by concepts it uses to model and interpret the world, which includes models and concepts learned from culture, right? So with the understanding of how Umwelt works, right, as it might be an allied society down the line. Oh, I do hope, I'm pretty sure we're going to get the Ohokeli emote. Pretty sure. But with the understanding of Umlaut, right, we've learned that killer whales tend to group up in specific groups as well, right? The monkeys do as well. And it's important to know it's not a biochemistry thing. It also is determined by culture, right? So you speak, right? You make sounds, you move your hands, we dance, we eat, we sing. Everything you do contributes to your perception of reality, contributes to your Umwelt, it contributes to how you understand and how you are able to communicate, right? I have always loved, and I think it's just kind of jumping to the next culture. I've always loved the idea of lizard folk. I don't know why. It's just been the thing for fantasy stories. And I always had this idea that the Mamoja, when they first introduced the Mamosha, and I was like, oh man, they're gonna go. They're from the West, right? They're gonna reference like Azteca. They're gonna reference this kind of stuff. I mean, I was prepared for that. I had the general idea because, again, this idea has come up in the past, right? You always play Argonians. Oh, I have an Argonian too. Yeah. I love the aesthetic of lizard folk. And so when I saw the Mamosha, I knew they were from the West. I knew they were going to pull from Azteca. But they didn't just pull from Azteca. Okay. What's really important to note is that the Lizard Gang, the Banga, oh yeah, Banga are in Final Fantasy XIV as well. They have their own culture too. But you have these lizard folk, and not only are they referencing Aztec, but they're also referencing the Maya. They're also referencing Inca. They're also referencing all these early Mesoamerican cultures in their own culture, right? And then using the Nahuatl language. And it was just so cool. Yeah, and then we got Lizardmen in Warhammer Fantasy. I know there's a group of Lizardmen in Warcraft. Because I imagine, yeah, that also are associated with that. And then someone in chat saying, is there some reason that the Bengal always get upset at being called lizards is that they're technically mammals? That is in the lore. Yes, it is. That is actually in Zadnor questline. When you complete the Zadnor questline, the Bengal that comes to help out tells you that part. So, lizards rise up. But yeah, when I tell you, I thought it was super cool that they not only did they reference Aztec, but they referenced all of the various Mesoamerican cultures of the South American traditions, right? Not only that, you had the cenotes, right? Right? You had the references of the meteorites, because if you don't know your regional lore, the Yucatan Peninsula is where the dinosaurs, or it's the rumor, right? They say it's the rumor, but a meteor struck the Yucatan Peninsula. There's a giant crater there. And that is, they're saying is that is what killed the dinosaurs. And what did they have in this forest? Meteor references, right? That was just really, really cool to see. And not only that, another big part that just this was like nail gun. This was just perfect. I was so obsessed that I added this to Final Fantasy XIV. But the Shibruk Prabil, we already talked about it, right? Wasn't just a taco, right? It wasn't just a taco. All right. Shibruk Prabil is a Final Fantasy Nakatamale. And I love Nakatamales. Oh, man. If I love oh, man. I could eat. I learned how to make those. And it's so messed up that I forgot how to make those. But banana leaf. Right? And then the masa, and then you have the meat, and then you got to do it all by hand, because they told me when they were teaching me how to make it, they didn't want store-bought stuff. They're like, here's my ingredient list. If you want to learn how to make this, here's my ingredient list. Go get this. But we don't want to do this store-bought. And I was like, okay. And they showed me how to make the masa. I learned how to make the masa in Honduras. And I laid out the beans and the meat and everything, and then we rolled it up in the banana leaf, and we put it in the pot, and we watched it boil, and it was just that, it was just so good. So that experience with that family that taught me how to make nacatamales, and that joy of that regional experience, and then I'm walking into these towns, right? Ishbrash. I'm learning about the Shibral and their history, and then they start talking about I think it was right at the part we went to the earthen oven, right, when I was like, there's no way they have nacatamales in Final Fantasy XIV. Looking at photos of one nacatamales now, they're so good. But yeah, again, another language element, right? Shibruk Pabil, we have Pibil in the real world. I know it's referred to by another name, because Shibruk was in reference to, it's like an old word they use for their hogs there. But that was amazing. They did that. They took a time not only to introduce a regional food to Final Fantasy XIV, They tied it into the lore of the area, right? Because you got the Jatika bananas, right? Yes, there's no such thing as glowing bananas in real life. But they put that in the game so that way people could connect to it better. And I was just like, I am in love with Tural so much. Mikasa. Yeah, Cochinita. There you go. Yeah, so I think the traditional name is Cochinita Pibil. And they changed it in reference to the animal that they were using, which was the Ibruk. There's a giant boar over there you have to go fight. But yeah, you want to try it IRL? It's Cochinita Pibil. And it's really good food. Good stuff. I'm actually... I was looking at a restaurant nearby that had some, and I've been really, really craving it. All right. So last portion, and again, I apologize. I know my panels aren't moving anymore. Like I said, this part is all notes now, and then kind of just moving forward because I was doing good, and then at a certain part I got cut off. But let's go ahead and finish up with our last part of the philosophy article. And it says, the cognitive universes we live in. Right? Commenting on the multitude of languages across the globe, right, the remark was made that the beauty of linguistic diversity is that it reveals to us just how ingenious and how flexible the human mind is. Human minds have invented not one cognitive universe, but 700. And go ahead and say that one more time. Human minds have invented not one cognitive universe, but 700. That we invent cognitive universes that we occupy, that's powerful. You get to be part of this developing experience in which you understand now. Thanks to this panel, hopefully you learned a little bit. Hopefully you took something really cool from this panel. But now you're part of this experience. You are now part of the cognitive universe that occupies the cultures of Tural. You got the understanding the specialist vocabulary. You know what Shipurupubil means now. Ain't no one gonna mess you up now. Ain't no one gonna surprise you now, thanks to this panel. And all these other words and all these other meanings. And of course, again, this was just a primer. This was just a snapshot. I had 90 minutes. I could talk about this for hours. You know that. But I encourage you to check all these cultures out. In-game and IRL. Learn about them. Learn about their universes. Learn about the universes they established. The history that goes into it. Because I promise you, they want to tell their story. They may not know they can. Right? And the focus on world building and day-to-day life made Tural feel so much more lived in than the later area. I know that was the point, but later area felt so lifeless and sterile in comparison. So after the panel, you're talking to us in a restaurant. Yeheheceyaa. Yeah. But yeah, I just want to go ahead and point it out. Like it says, if each language is a cognitive universe, right? Our specializations and interests are word galaxies. Our language contextualizes things. It helps us to share experiences. But if you broaden those capabilities, you're going to be able to share more. You're going to be able to experience more. And Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail is inviting you to explore that. And I am inviting you to explore that. Because it's so incredible. It's such a beautiful thing. For the last couple minutes, I do want to dedicate a little bit of this portion to a little bit more IRL stuff. And I know I said you should say Yeheheceyaa as the grab. We didn't really go over every word, but I did want to say some of the major words so you can kind of hear me saying it as we talked about it and invite you more into to learning more about this. But we're going to spend the last couple minutes of the panel we have to talk about something a little bit more serious. Let's skip some stuff. Yeah, ignore those. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, there was actually an ongoing effort to translate Final Fantasy XIV to Spanish. And I think it's a really admirable effort and a very hard one to do. Translating anything takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of organization and communication. And so if you have the opportunity, I do encourage you to check out twitter.com or x.com/FFXIV/fandub. And please, when they start going forward to post their project out, that you retweet their stuff, you share their stuff. You would love to see the game have Spanish as an included language. This project that they're doing, the Spanish fandub, is in fact an effort to get Square Enix to see the benefits of a Spanish dub. So this is a step forward. There's a step forward in this process. So I do encourage everyone in the panel. I encourage everyone who's listening right now. And if you are having the chance to access some internet, check out this account, please. And when they start posting, please share their work. They already have asked for voice actors to come in and help voice or dub this. So the goal is, in fact, to cover the. I think they're starting with Dawntrail, and they want to eventually cover the entire game and hacer una traducción fiel a español para todos. He said the game deserves a Spanish translation. I understand English just fine, but so many friends feel left out. Yeah, you know how many people will start playing? Nada me hará de faltar. Maestro Luis Suárez, mi pastor. That's so funny. I love that. I just realized, yeah, that it was. Luis Suárez is awesome. But yes, I did want to take some time, real quick, to put this face forward into my project and introduce you to this idea. Please go ahead, if you have the time, to go follow them and let them know that you are interested in supporting their effort in getting this game translated into Spanish. Because we can't visit Thrall and experience the cultures and the cognitive universes enshrined in Thrall if we don't understand where it comes from. And it does come from a lot of people in the Latino community. So if you can, in fact, help out, please go ahead and do so. Are you glad they're doing this? Oh, it's so good. Alrighty. And that is, in fact, the bulk portion of all the content material that I had for the panel. I want to go ahead and dedicate the next 20 minutes or so to questions from the chat. Q&A. I know we had a few questions. I did try to catch some and add... Oh, actually, yeah. No, we'll do questions, and then for the last minutes, I'm going to go do a quick review of the Lalafell stuff, because I just forgot. We didn't talk about the Lalafell stuff. I said I was going to. Anyways, but we'll save that for the last... We'll do that last 5 minutes. I'll do a quick Alo rundown. But now is your time to ask questions. If you have any questions in chat, feel free to ask. I know I saw one earlier. Someone was asking about the planet, why it seems dark on some sides. It changes darkness and things like that. Go ahead and tell you that they do, in fact, try to represent the proper rotation of the planet in space. So we're on the moon. That's Aetheris. They try to show the position of the sun. And so when you're following, right? So when you go onto Aetheris, you see the moon's phases, right? You know, eclipse, what have you, full moon, new moon. But when you're on the moon, they try to show that same effect by obscuring the planet, and that's supposed to represent the full moon, the new moon, eclipse. It's a lunar presentation, lunar perspective, and we don't understand how that looks, right? Because we've never been on the moon before. But they went ahead and replicated that to the best of their ability, even though they've never been on the moon before. I love Final Fantasy XIV. But yes, the reason why it looks like that is because you are seeing the planet from the moon's perspective, a thing that you actually cannot do IRL. And that's why it looks so weird sometimes. You'll be like, why is it dark? Well, yeah, that's what it would look like if you were on the moon. Right? And the phases and stuff. Cool stuff. All right, do we have any other questions in chat? I know if there was some that I missed, I do apologize. I did try to keep up to the best that I could. Anything that missed my little purview, please feel free to let me know. I'm scrolling, and this is at least half my static speak Spanish. So yes, definitely please. I wanted to let everyone know about the fandub because it's I was doing some research, and then I saw people mention, they're like, you know, it's kind of unfair that Doral references so much of the Latino community, but there's no Spanish translation. So you know what? Let's go ahead and try to push this forward. So you may have had a major squeal when you saw the capybara amount. Yes, I'm so excited about that. All the references to capybaras. The dinosaurs. The dinosaurs. North America has so many dinosaur fossils, by the way. So when I saw the dinosaurs, right? The Yeheheceyaa, right? We have the Tyrannosaurus in the Tonawatan tongue. There's a Triceratops in Tonawatan. Oh man, that gave me that. That was unique, particular joys. Oh, you have 2 guinea pigs IRL, and you love them and capybaras. That's so cute. Small rodents are so adorable. So adorable. Let's see. True. Curious about a lot of Ixali names being similarly inspired by Natawal. So that is a great reference. Thank you, Fuzzle, for bringing that up. Of course, Final Fantasy XIV is a fantasy franchise, and they did reference a lot of Aztec culture and Natawat. They referenced a lot of that prior to introducing Toral. And in chat, Fuzzle was mentioning the Ixali, right, which is the bird allied society that we met, the bird people allied society that we met in Eorzea. It remains to be seen what that connection might be. But all we know is that the Ixali descend from the Ixalian chimeras that was developed by the Alagon Empire. So if the Alagons never went out west, I don't think the West interested them as much as the 3 great continents. But that doesn't mean that they wouldn't have had Turali scientists who may have created the Ixalian and then introduced the naming. Because remember, Garuda was their general. So the Ixalian had a full-on military. There could have been Turali scientists. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Oh, we got good questions now. Let's see. You think Fantasy Alaska would just be formed from the astral umbral of ice, or I'm thinking this too, or scars from the astral umbral of ice? Or are you thinking this too deeply? I want to say that Fantasy Alaska might just it's a good thought process, right? But let's see. Can I pull up a map? Actually, yeah. I'm going to go ahead. Let me. We got 15 minutes. We can do some in-game stuff. Let me hide this. I'm gonna pull up the map. And you won't be able to see it in game, but in the stream. And I do want to show it off, right? So this is in fact the map of the all of everything we can go to, and we know that the calamities took place over here. Eorzea is marked as, it's supposed to be in the idea, the center of the world, right? Silver Tear Falls grows directly into that. So the core of ether, right? The most ether of the entire planet pours out of Eorzea. Land loved by gods. Think of Eorzea as like a massive font of energy, life energy of the world. It's just that's the live stream. Anyways, and lots of ether there. Not as much ether in other places, but the most you can say comes from this area. With that also comes the calamities. So all those areas that were affected were generally in this spot. Now we're learning that the calamity of ice actually froze the oceans over here, because we had the Makote crossover from Central Ilsabard from Corvos, right? We got that lore from Graha being a member of the Corvosi people, right? He told us about the icy cross, right? We learned about the ice from the South Sea Isles. That's over here too, right? Alo is over here too. So the calamity of ice affected this particular ocean, if you see where my marker is. That's not saying it wouldn't have affected in a climate sort of way, where the cold would have affected something and caused localized freezing, but the calamity didn't take place there, if that makes sense. Because everything, right, they even said that the Golmore jungle didn't used to exist in this area during the Evilisian kingdom. So the Golmore jungle grew after Delita, after the Ramses story, and the suggestion was made that that was a result of the calamity. This will affect the local trout population. You all know that the calamity affected the local trout population. So take that into perspective. Your idea isn't bad. There's no such thing as a deep idea, right? I would like to redirect it. Think of it as this. If the cold has a source, we can say that climate probably was affected by calamity of ice in such a way that areas different areas on the map would have started getting colder and freeze more, but the specific event of the calamity was over here in this ocean. Oh, the Charlie and Fisher quest. Yeah, you're right. So cool. But yes, thank you for your question. I appreciate that, Lowe's fan, and I know you shared it in chat, but I wasn't able to catch it earlier. So, and no wonder ether travel's so expensive. We got is Ratsahan influenced by the Mughal Empire? I heard some Persian accents in some of the VA. That's a great question. Thank you for sharing. As a particinator. So I'm gonna shorten it to par. Ratsahan is a huge representation of Swana cultures in a very broad stroke sort of way. As my mom is from Trinidad, and her culture is specifically associated with Indian heritage, a lot of Thavnarian stuff resonated with me as a member of that culture. And so it was important to note that as I was doing research, not only did I find Indian references, I also found references to Persia. I found references to Turkey. I found references to other nations in the Middle East. So I like to call Thavnair as like the Swana Center, right? Southwest Asian, North Africa. Very broad stroke of multiple cultures, because they have what is it? Urdu. They're using Urdu words. They have Turkish words, and then they have the Sanskrit, right? The Arkasodra introduced Sanskrit. The Ara introduced the Turkey script, right? And then you have the Highlanders coming in from the mainland, from Corvos, and they introduce Arabic. That's where they get the word alchemy from. Again, Final Fantasy is amazing. Love these cultural elements and stuff. And then, yeah, but if you heard Persian accents in some of the VA, it's definitely because it's a broad stroke Swana representation. So I think they grabbed from all sorts of different areas, right? Because they even showed it in the names, they even showed it in the food. Not everything is from India specific, right? There's a lot of Thai reference. There's a lot of people, I saw people talk about Laos, Thailand, right? Referencing to all those. Apparently, Vitra is a reference to a spirit known as a Naga. So the dragon design of Vitra is more associated with the Southeast design than the actual Indian design, which is super cool. And there's Indonesian food in the Arkasodra Society. So yeah, no, very important to know that all these cultures we talk about, it's not just one, it's not just two, it's a bucket. They just grabbing influences from everything, and they threw it all together in these beautiful tapestries, is what I like to call them. Yeah, Sri Lakshmi is in Alamigo instead of Thavnair. Sometimes early X packs just do stuff, but they do take the time to tie it back together when it is necessary. But again, it is a living dynamic expansion. They try to follow through and keep people active in the MMO. So sometimes we will miss out on stuff, but I guarantee if you ask about it, who knows, we'll get an answer. I've seen them answer stuff long, long ago. Stuff that we never thought we'd get an answer, and we suddenly got one. If something like Ishgard could happen, I wouldn't be surprised if similar locales affected by past calamities. Pashkamai, you are on a great point. Yes, Ishgard was in fact not cold, or not cold in the way you understood it. The way we see Ishgard was not the way Ishgard was in 1.0, and that was a direct result of the 7th Umbral Calamity. So if that's the case, if there were 6 other calamities, they would have all affected different regional stuff too, if the 7th was able to do what it did to Ishgard. You know. Curious similarities with Girabani and Thavnair. So Alex is on a really good point. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this real fast. The connection between Girabani and Thavnair is trade. Because if you do the culinary quests for Stormblood, you learn that there is a trade route between Thavnair, Alamigo, and Doma. And they actually continue to... They weren't able to do so because of the Empire, but in the past, that connection was maintained because of one specific dish, Doman Sukiyaki, which is apparently a variant of the Alamigan buckler stew with Doman ingredients. So, that's why I think Ishgard didn't have snow once. Yes. That's a crazy... check out, if you have a chance, Ishgard 1.0 is a beautiful place to visit and in pictures, but we have absolutely no idea what that's about. It's really cool. And then we have, let's see, another Meracidia, evil demon cat is talking about Meracidia, interested in the Alagons more than the dragons. More to do the dragons. Love to get to go to Meracidia, which is definitely probably going to happen. I highly expect Meracidia in the future. I mean, let's look at the world map again. It's already here. For the first time since 2023, we know where Meracidia is. We know what it looks like. It's covered in clouds, but I mean, come on. Not that hard to really point out. So yeah, Meracidia is definitely on the map of destinations. And if we've already done every single thing on Emmett's list -2, yeah. So definitely that point. So we got, let's see, Meracidia dragons with Australian accents. Love it. What they're going to do about Corvos. So the current update with Corvos is that there is a summit being currently held between the leaders of Thavnair, all the local different communities in that area, and Garlemald. They're trying to develop a new form of government that doesn't have anything to do with the Empire's association with their economic structures. That's the current state of Corvos. And I think the latest and greatest, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it is Tales from the Dawn. Because I want to say Hien asks Croatoan for help on Corvosi culture because he gets called into the meeting. So yeah, Corvos is still getting updated in the background. It's just a very background sort of thing that getting updated side stories. And I want to see Corvos too. I mean, I know for a fact you all are going to see Corvos too. That's Croatoan's homeland. Don't you want to go to Croatoan's house? Don't you want to go find Croatoan's plushies? Sorry, I'm not mocking y'all. I know how it is. Being passionate about a character is not a bad thing, but I mean, so let's see. Fisher Quest, also related to Alamigo thing. I once heard it was inspired by Turkey. Yep. Don't forget, there's also baklava, right? There's baklava in Alamigo that comes from Turkey. Where did Arenville's accent come from? We meet all the other people from Yassilani, and none of them have his accent, and it's not Charlian. Good question. Alrighty. So we have 4 minutes. That's gonna be the last question for tonight. Again, you can find me on the Essalim Collate, ESSALIM. I am always available for lower questions on Twitter or on Discord, right? But let me finish with this question. He's asking about the Vieira. Why does Arenville sound Icelandic? And as people don't sound Icelandic. The reason is the Vieira are a reference to the original voice actor of Fran. I know she goes by both names. Fran is the titular character of Final Fantasy XII, right? And when she was introduced, she also introduced the species and the people of the Vieira to the greater community. Now, the Vieira are based on her and her story and the people that we meet in 12, right? Her voice actor, and she was, as far as I know, her and all the other voice actors for the Vieira were Icelandic. And so Banri Oda decided, in honor of that he was going to make all Vieira Icelandic. And so he took that, yes, a Norwegian, thank you. I say Icelandic, but Norwegian actor casted, decided to make that, and then use that voice for all of them. Now, my theory is that Arenville did once speak like a Yassilani member, but had to change to the traditional Vieira accent when he moved to Charlian to hide his Tirali heritage. And so if you want to kind of roleplay that, if you want to roleplay traditional Vieira, then they would be sounding Icelandic, Scandinavian. If you want to roleplay that they're from Dra, they'll have a Shatona accent. Be very different too. Ari is Icelandic. Okay, it's Icelandic. Yeah. Because they are based in, it's Scandinavian syllables. That's the word. So that's the last question. Let me double check to make sure that is the last question. I think that is. Yeah, everyone else is talking about Arenville right now. So good stuff. Thank you so much for all those questions. I do have 2 minutes left, so we're going to go ahead and finish strong with a quick snapshot of Alo Alo Island. A lot of people did bring that up, and I did forget to talk about it, so I want to go ahead and finish the panel with this. Alo Alo Island's crazy, and I want everyone to go do it, because I do not have any idea how to tell you that a variant dungeon somehow is central to the plot of Azem. I had no idea that that was a thing. But the way it works is that there was a group of people who lived on the island. They lived there and they built a thing known as this gemstone. And they had a person known as the speaker. This gemstone had incredible vitality. I mean, it was making everything grow super green, super huge, big trees. They were wanting to understand how to use this, but they couldn't really uncrack the code. But they had this gemstone. They built their camps around it. All the work that they did in trying to discover this gemstone became the foundation of Arcanima, right? And then during that process, right, they were about to get destroyed by the ongoing calamity. The speaker prayed to that artifact, was teleported away from Alo Alo Island. Their people left. They were brought to a new shard with that device. That new shard was, in fact, the remnants of Alexandria. And as we learned from an interview, the ninth shard. And then it was the scientists of preservation that met with the fleeing Lalafels from Alo Island with that artifact. They worked together on the artifact. They reinforced it with electrope. They remembered the old cantations. They remembered the old stuff. And then the speaker was able to reconnect with the source shard and come back in its future and show up at Yasolani. And that, my Warriors of Light, is your primer on Torali indigenous languages. Thank you so much for this awesome opportunity. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you all have a wonderful EtherCon. Again, don't forget there are wonderful charity opportunities to earn loot for those charity opportunities. If you want to go ahead and donate, please go ahead and consider do so. You donate $6 on my side of things, and I'll write for you. So with that, thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead and I'm going to end stream now, since they got to get moving on and they got to get the next panelist on. But if you got questions, again, please feel free to ask. I am always down to speak with fellow lore enthusiasts because, as you know, the door to the shelves are always open. I'll catch you next time on the Eslam Collate.